Welcome to the Word from the Ancient Path. Stories for the journey from Ancient Path Ministries. I'm your host, Pastor Kevin Jobe. It is our hope to bring encouragement and blessing to you through stories of how God works extraordinary things through ordinary people called to the work of bringing good news, connecting in Christ, and building the kingdom. Hey there, we're in week 6 of God's Art Gallery of Divine Creativity. And that's a phrase I recorded in a journal about a decade ago, and we've been considering what that phrase means to me. And we started with the heavens that tell God's glory, and the last 4 weeks, we've been looking at the Lord's creativity as seen by me in the Job kids. So after Carice and Zach, after Ella, Josiah, and Livy, rolling back in time, we're going to come to the story of our firstborn child and our first son-in-law. Now, in the Bible, in Colossians, the first chapter, verse 15, it says this. It says, "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things are created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Firstborn. There's a history of something really important here. Now, I want to be clear that nuestro primogénita does not have the kind of power that Jesus wields. But her arrival and her life have provided a strong witness to Tani and I of the sovereignty of God over all things in this world. You see, it wasn't long after we were married and we were still struggling to find our footing, and Tani's doctor told us that we wouldn't be having children. Any children. Ever. Tani had a physical ailment, and I brought some emotional damage to the table, and so we didn't even argue the point. We just resigned ourselves. But the one who is before all things and who holds all things together must have been chuckling just a bit at that thought and at our surrender. And so he let Tani in on a little secret in the spring of 1998. She told it to me this way. She said, "I was home from school as much as exhausted as I was sick, and I was in bed and praying, and I heard a nearly audible voice. I was feeling like Hannah, after 8 years with no child. And God told me that day that I would have a girl and that we were to call her Grace. Well, she arrived making noise. She said her first words at 8 months, and she has rarely stopped to take a breath since then. At 3 years old, she met and knew all of our neighbors before Tani and I did. Like her mama, that girl does not know a stranger. Grace Margaret was, and Grace Margaret is, a force. She stirs up clouds wherever she goes. Yeah, and she's got nicknames like the rest. Grace-a-boo, Grace-a-gaboo, boo, 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 sweetheart, baby doll, boo, boo, girl. But she really likes Gracie. And her middle name, it points to her heritage. It was Tani's great-grandmother's name, and it was my mama's name. Now, along with that active mouth, our firstborn child has always had open arms. You see, in Gracie's world, there's always been room for any and all. For the easy people, and for the not so easy people. And for those who fit comfortably into the world's pigeonholes and categories, and for the people who don't feel like they fit in anywhere. I don't know a single person in this world more aptly named than Grace Margaret. She does her best to share an unending supply of that grace. In the 7th chapter of Revelation, there's this wonderful scene in heaven. It says this, John says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, and they were wearing white robes and holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, 'Salvation belongs to our God and to the Lamb.'" Ooh, friend, I ache to see this day. I get so tired of this forced division of God's human race into these groups that somehow in our flawed humanity supposedly need to find reasons to be in conflict with each other. The Grace Margaret Jobe part of the exhibit in God's Gallery of Divine Creativity is one of the most multicultural I have ever seen. Now, part of this is in her upbringing in blue collar Norwood and East Toledo, Ohio, followed by a wealthy suburban Cincinnati. In all of these places, she lived and she loved among people of a myriad of economic statuses, of ethnicities, creeds, traditions, languages, habits, and shades. And Gracie Margarita made herself at home in all of these places, but none more so than in our Cubano hometown. She arrived there in Jovellanos as a 9-year-old, and like an extremely high-quality sponge, she just started to absorb language and culture and warmth and spiritual closeness. And she became like a daughter to her Tio and Tia, my baby brother and sister-in-law, and she even lived with them for 6 months after she graduated high school. She still has to work oftentimes to convince people that she's not native Cubana. And from there, Gracie's world tour took her to a conservative Christian college in Ohio, a semester in Spain where she made friends from various corners of the world, and then back to Cincinnati to finish school and to work with Tani and little sister Livy in a ministry in the poorest and most violent neighborhood in Cincinnati. And her calling since then has remained with kids and families in Hispanic cultures, dealing with economic issues, juggling relational issues that are exacerbated by immigration difficulties, behavioral disabilities, and many other struggles, almost all of it in Espanol. And our Gracie loves this calling. And her mama and I love the way it looks on her. Now, during our girl's time in urban Cincinnati, she once told me that she wanted me to meet a young man who had drawn her interest and worked with her at the center. And as my girl had always dated young men of varying ethnicities, and the mission center was in a nearly all-black neighborhood, I had an image in my head of this guy, Cole. Wrong. It seems that our future son-in-law was a very white guy. And he introduced Gracie to yet another cultural, rural Ohio farm town. And you know what? She does just fine there too. There were two qualities in him that I saw that very first day that made me understand what Gracie saw in him. First of all, here was this big, strong young man who sat on the floor and cared for little kids with a great deal of tenderness. And then he just happened to have the brown hair and brown eyes of her tío, Joseito. Cole didn't wait very long to fall in love with Gracie. Now, our son-in-law, he's an accountant. He deals in linear understanding, right? Making sure that quantities appear correct and values and digits align properly. So how's this art, you might ask? Well, our spiritual ancestors, they wrote much of the biblical literature in structures that were meant to highlight ancient understandings of the significance of the manner in which numbers align. I'm serious. Now, we don't spend a lot of energy waxing spiritual about math and equations these days, but a lot of great artwork has been fashioned by arrangements of shadows and textures, of phrases and gestures and figures and movements, measurements of time and materials, and all of that into something sure, certain, seemingly inevitable in the way that it reflects its human creator and his or her celestial creator. As humanity continues to discover, mathematics in varying form and function is essential in creation and has been present since the beginning. You see, this is one of the things I love about the two of them. The certainty of outcome in Cole's work, as numbers have an inherent consistency, and his capacity to use this little slice of creativity he's been gifted by God to anticipate such results, well, that provides a needed stability alongside Gracie's oftentimes unpredictable and relationally based work and calling. And so together they make this really strong team. And so right now today, I look forward with great anticipation to see where God leads them in the days, and the months, and the years ahead. Genesis 1, Scripture begins with these words. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said. And then God spoke an incredible creation into existence by His word and His breath. The universe declares His majesty. The heavens are telling the glory of God. My kids, too. Despite the popular idea of today, we were not created by, nor are we controlled or led or guided or blessed by the heavens or the created universe. We humans are indeed the crown of creation, reflections of our Creator, and we've been given authority and responsibility for the care of the art gallery of divine creativity. And you know what? We'd be very wise to take that seriously at all levels. So anyway, now you've had just a little glimpse at the way in which I see the work of the hand of the God in each Jobe kid. Gracie and Cole, Livy, Josiah, Reese and Zach, and my Ella Bella. Individually and as a whole, they are simply amazing exhibits of His skill, and they are incredible gifts to Tani and I. So I pray that you'll take the time to consider God's great work of art in those you love. Well, we'll see you next time. Blessings. Visit our website, ancientpathministries.org, to learn more about what we do and how you can join us through prayer, mission trips, networking, and financial partnership. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Ancient Path Ministries. This is Pastor Kevin Jobe speaking to you for Ancient Path Ministries. Until next time, may God bless you abundantly. Go and be the church.